Chiaki Ishimura-Smillie is a member of the Japan Yoga Therapy Society. She completed a yoga instructor certification course and yoga therapy instructor's course in Sendai, Japan in 2009. Which was conducted by the Indian Yoga Institute Vivekananda, I hope I said that right, Yoga Research Foundation. Chiaki also obtained her yoga therapist certification from the International Association of Yoga Therapists in 2017. She knows firsthand how important it is to balance the mind and body, and she believes that yoga has helped her maintain her wellness and would like to share the mindfulness practice, especially with those who seek ways to relax even in stressful situations. Chiaki came to Portland in 2012 to be reunited with her husband and daughter, who moved here earlier following the 2011 earthquake in Japan. So Chiaki, welcome and thank you so much for taking the time to speak with us. Can you briefly share how long you've known you've had lupus and what eventually led to a diagnosis and how you're feeling these days?
Yeah, I was diagnosed at a hospital in Tokyo in April 1997. Until then, I had no idea what it was that I had. In the year before that diagnosis, I had developed my wrist pain, and I thought that there was a carpal tunnel syndrome. And I had a blood test for rheumatism, and at the time, the test came negative. But the real downward spiral began after I came back from my overseas trip in April of that year. It was a group tour of Israel and Egypt, Cairo, Egypt, and climbing up Mount Sinai was part of that tour. And I joined the group and we climbed up the Mount Sinai at night, saw a beautiful sunrise, but then I remember we were exposed to very strong sunlight climbing down. But then I don't know if it is linked to lupus, but it was only after I did a research that exposing to strong sunlight might trigger the illness. And then I thought I had a minor cold. At first, I developed a slight fever, which wouldn't go away. I was working full-time at the time as a reporter of a foreign news organization, Newswire service. And I stopped at a medical clinic near my office, then got some medications. A week later, nothing changed. It was getting worse. One day, I was still going to work, but one day my boss saw my face and told me to go home and rest, and I must have looked so bad. And then I was getting weaker and weaker, and I found myself unable to open a pull tab can. And holding the frying pan was getting difficult. And at the time, I think I had a routine medical checkup, and a phone call came, and it was a result about my urine sample, and they found protein 3+, which is quite bad. Usually has to be 0 or maybe plus minus, but +3 was quite grave. And that night, I think I saw kind of reddish color in my urine, and I knew I would have to do something about it right away. And I did. I asked my husband to take me to a hospital, and after a quick test, I was immediately hospitalized. And I spent the rest of the year in a hospital bed.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, this was in Japan. So the medical system is different. And I think lupus is one of the designated illnesses that have more subsidies for medical treatment.
Oh, wow, that's really interesting.
Yeah, and things are changing, but I think it still is.
Thank you. So, what motivated you to start practicing yoga, and how do you think it's helped you holistically, mind and your body? Has it helped with your lupus symptoms or any flares?
Well, a friend of mine who was also a reporter at the time, and I think she was already practicing yoga, and she suggested after I got out of the hospital that I practice yoga, because she says it's a good way to balance the autonomic nervous system. And I think she's right. The autonomic nervous system is important to maintain our health, and stress is a major factor to lose that balance. And looking back, I think I was under a quite stressful, I was in a quite stressful situation at the time. I was working in a hectic working environment, and I also had married a year before, which is a good news, but still changing lifestyle is a kind of added stress too. And I was not taking care of myself very well. I was eating donut and coffees for morning, and I knew I should sleep more, but I used to work morning shifts quite often, but my husband, who was also working as a reporter, worked as a night shift often, and so that sort of shortened my sleep time. So all things combined, that I was losing my balance, and my body was screaming, and I guess it manifested as lupus. And after practicing yoga, I think my friend was right. I think I regained more slowly, but surely more balance in my autonomic nervous system, which is on one hand, it's a fight and flight sympathetic nervous system, and on the other hand is parasympathetic nervous system, which is rest and digest system. We need both to be alive, but if you're constantly under stress for a long time, then you will lose balance. And I think many illnesses can be, well, if not the only cause, it's aggravated by tremendous stress. And so I found some solution to reverse, or at least to mitigate that through yoga.
That's great. Yeah, we should all be so lucky to have something that we can find like that. What type of yoga do you practice, and can you explain what you incorporated in each practice, and how did you decide that that was the right practice for you?
I practice quite often what's called isometric yoga, the yogic breathing exercises. And it's also something I teach. It is a rather meditative and gentle practice, and using a voice. I use most of the time humming sound, but it can be ah sound or oo sound together with the movement. And I also incorporate isometric resistance, either pressing or pulling. And the key is not to use your full strength. You have to use maybe up to 1/2 or even 1/3 of the strength. So adding stress and then releasing it is a good way to experience the relaxation response. And so I think to cultivate awareness and to own your relaxation state is quite helpful for me, and I like that practice. And I also practice more ancient yoga, Raja yoga, which incorporate not only isometric aspects, but also isotonic movement to pump up your heart and strengthen your lung kind of movement. But it's when I teach, I try to see each student what the level of their physical strength, and depending on that, I offer different things, different practice. And so I think I only said movement or pose or so-called asana, and combined with the breathing practice, making humming sound is indeed, in a way, the breathing exercise or breathing technique. And it's a combination of pose and breathing exercise. So that I think is quite effective.
Yeah, that's great. So how would you suggest that someone who has lupus begin a yoga practice?
A more gentle practice, and I think you can find lots of vigorous practice around here or around the United States. This is more focusing on poses. But if you can find practice that the focus is not really perfecting the beautiful pose, but to cultivate awareness, that would be ideal, I think.
So is there some place that somebody could go if they were searching on the internet? Is there something that they should search for in particular that would bring them to these kind of yoga practices?
In the States, there is an organization called the International Association of Yoga Therapists.
Okay.
And so yoga therapy is budding but growing field, and I think I'm hoping that it will be part of the integrated medicine. It can be a good way as a preventive medicine. Of course, not everybody has a medical doctor or nurses, and yet trained yoga therapists have certain level of understanding about the illness, or at least if you find a good yoga teacher, it's important to to talk to the teacher and let them know your condition, so that that teacher will understand. Hopefully, they will accommodate for the movement or practice for you. And I only said movement and breathing exercises. There is also meditation is part of yoga practice, but it's I guess it's not for everyone, at least at the beginning. So if you're going to start yoga, it's good to probably Google. Maybe you can Google yoga therapy or yoga therapists and find you'll be lucky to find someone in your area. And I live in Portland, so Portland, Oregon. But I'm not the only yoga therapist. There are many others. And also the International Association of Yoga Therapists are based in the United States, but members of yoga therapists live outside of the United States too. So if you are living outside the US, maybe you can still search their website and find some yoga therapists in your area.
So Chiaki, what's one piece of advice you would give to somebody who has lupus, who may want to start a yoga practice, but may not always be feeling up to it on some days? What would you say to them?
In yoga, regular practice is important, but I don't want to tell someone with lupus to feel like self-accusatory of not feeling up to it, because I know that there are good days and there are bad days. And during my hospitalization, there are times that I don't remember completely what I was, where I was, and there are, I guess, days that there's nothing you can do. So before coming to this interview, I went over the notes that my father took, or it's an excerpt of how I was during my close to 8 months of hospitalization. And I realized that I was so ill. I was so I was so sick, and so through his eyes, I didn't realize what he was seeing. Was me totally out of my mind and being so. I suffered seizures, or I got so excited, and I guess there's you would call it psychosis even, and it might have been a central nervous system lupus, or the side effect of so much steroid. I had to be transferred to a psychiatric ward and had to take medication for that. And I lost weight, and I wouldn't eat, and I wouldn't even try to take medicine. And I guess I lost, I weighed I don't know how many pounds, more than 10 pounds.
Wow. And you're little.
and but he and my father and my mother took turns, and my husband took turns taking care of me. But there are times that I felt so sick that I wasn't sure if I would ever get better. And I started even writing notes if I cannot wake up, and I will give this to this person and that person and things like that. And yet, my doctors and nurses and my parents, my husband, were all supportive, and with their help, I was gradually getting better. Because I was so sick, and I know how it was. After that, many things I can do again. I'm grateful. I think so. For that matter, getting sick was it's unfortunate, but it's not the end. And taught me a lot, I think. And I wish I had known or practiced yoga before I got sick. Then I don't know if I developed or if I got this sick to have to spend so many months in the hospital. And studying yoga and becoming yoga therapist was my way to help others who may be able to lessen the suffering or reduce the chances of flare up. And I hope to be able to help as many people as possible.
So
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Chiaki. Thank you for sharing your story. Thank you for talking about yoga. I know everybody out there is really going to appreciate this information. Hopefully that it will help change somebody's life and how they approach their themselves holistically, and just give them one more tool in the toolbox to help them with lupus or really any autoimmune or inflammatory disease. So thank you so much.
Thank you.